Welcome to I Hate It Here, the podcast for HR and people professionals, making the hardest job in the world just a little bit easier. I'm Hiba Youssef.
Are you rewarding people for the work that they're actually doing? Because I think the biggest issue I'm seeing right now with like JP Morgan Chase is they're measuring people by their inputs, meaning I see you. Whereas if you measure people by, wow, she put together an amazing quarterly review report. This person put this together. She had this idea. So it's starting to really recognize the work that people are doing, because at the end of the day, that's what you're there for.
Welcome back to your favorite podcast where we're always dropping truth bombs and real talk. I'm Hiba, your favorite HR person and host, and I'm in your ears to bring you some joy and levity to your day, debunk everything you thought you knew about work, and also maybe life. And today we're serving up 3 hard truths about careers, like how working hard doesn't necessarily guarantee a promotion, getting fired might be your glow-up moment, and showing up in sweatpants doesn't necessarily mean you're not exec material. You can ask me how I know. Joining me today is someone who is going to separate career facts from corporate fiction. April Little is a former HR executive turned executive career coach, wildly recognized for helping mid-level professional women transition into senior leadership. She's a Time 100 creator, frequently shares coaching insights on LinkedIn, and hosts the executive material newsletter that offers tactical career strategy. Her background includes leadership roles in recruiting, managing high-volume recruiting, achieving multiple promotions while working remotely, hell yeah, and transforming a job loss setback into executive success. I have stalked her for years on LinkedIn, and I'm so glad she is finally here on the podcast. April, welcome.
Thank you so much for having me. I've been a fan of your newsletter and your podcast for a really long time. So the fact that you asked me to come on is a full circle moment.
And let's take a minute and celebrate your Time 100 creator list. How cool.
Thank you. Something I was not expecting, because I'm a coach and I do enjoy creating. So it was definitely a nice little surprise here at the midpoint of the year.
What was it like getting that email, like, you're on this list? Were you like, is this real?
I did.
This is the first year they had done this list.
I actually did. So I got an email from the editorial director, and I assumed that she was just running a story on coaches in the state of careers, because let's just be honest, the state of careers in 2025, dumpster fire. So I was like, okay, this might be a great way for me to advertise my business. So I was going back and forth answering questions. And the entire time she was asking questions that would be published. So, and then a few days later, she emailed me. She said, I'm really pleased to share this news. You've made our Time 100 inaugural list. And I had to read it 5 times. I emailed her back. I said, hey, did you mean to send this to me? She actually, like I did. I was like, did you mean to send this to me? And she wrote me back. She said, yes, I'm really excited to share that. I said, okay. So I did actually, I wrote her back. I was like, I thought I was going to be published in a regular article here, but I'll take it. Thank you.
I'm dying. You were like, yes, I'll take this accolade. Did you get to go to the party? Didn't they do a party too? Wasn't it like a cool party?
They did. So it was a party in New York City. I did go into it thinking that the party would be more, it was a gala and it would be slightly more formal, but it was more of a mixer. I still enjoyed it. I got a chance to meet some really cool creators in passing. And it was great, because I love going down to the city, because I live in upstate, which essentially is another state. So
yeah, I was going to say, feels like that.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I grew up I spent a few years in Ithaca, New York. So upstate New York, I have done. It's not for me.
Yeah. No, I born and raised here. It's also not for me, but I just haven't found another place.
DC.
So
DC welcomes you. We'll take you down here in Virginia. We'd love to have you as neighbor.
Yeah.
I'm just so pumped you agreed to join me on this podcast. I had just was like enamored with you from the second I got on LinkedIn and started creating content, and your content just really stood out to me as like being real. Clearly you had experience in the work. Like I get so mad when people are creating content about things they don't know anything about. And It was just like really cool to see you on that list, because I was like, hell yes, like one of ours made it.
I appreciate that so much, because there are a lot of people that are coaches, career coaches, offering a lot of career advice, and they haven't even worked in HR adjacent functions. They haven't even worked as a hiring manager. And many of them, I actually came across one the other day where the person has actually never been promoted, and she's giving out advice on how to get promoted. She's not from HR recruiting, which I think is, a nice placeholder to be able to do that, right? Even if you haven't, because you know what it takes. So that's always interesting to come across.
Well, I can't wait to get into
Yeah.
our career hard truths today. But before we get to our three hard truths, I just want to hear one hard truth about work in general. That's what I've been asking everyone this season.
Yeah. I'm going to make this resonant for 2025. The
Okay.
hard truth is that the careers that we knew no longer exist. Being
Oh
able
my
to,
God. Sorry. Pour one out
I'm
for our
just trying to,
cold
I'm just
careers.
trying to be on a high note here.
It's okay. We're going to go through the range of emotions. I've cried on this
Yeah.
podcast before.
Yeah.
Anyone listening knows.
Yeah.
What? Because of AI? Is that just like, am I oversimplifying it?
100% because of AI. In fact, later today, I plan on reading the government's report, 100-page report that they just released on AI. And how is that going to affect us? That was just, I think that might have been published, might have been Friday, but don't quote me. So, because of AI, we've had a very interesting history in this country of really over prioritizing people in technology fields. Like there's an elitism tied to working in tech. And I was hoping that that was behind us, but the divide is back and it's even wider than it ever was, especially as I've kind of gleaned even that report, because I wanted to make sure that when I answer that question, it was more grounded in what I'm seeing and not how I feel. That most of the job creation going forward is going to be in technology, DevOps, all those things. And that is difficult, right? So careers as we know it, that is a hard truth to accept, has changed and evolved. I won't say that it's done. I have a theory that many of us may find ourselves being 1099s in 10 years for two different companies doing HR, two different companies doing comms, as long as it's not a, conflict of interest. I think careers are going to start to look relatively entrepreneurial.
Yeah, I read that job confidence report from LinkedIn that they put out, and it's like basically your confidence to like your ability to how confident you are in getting a job and securing a job. And one of the stats that actually stood out for me in that whole report was like 1 in 3 Americans has 2 jobs. And I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, I hear it, but then to like see it in the report too, I was like, okay, yeah, like careers kind of look different. Like some people have to work 2 jobs to get to an income level so they can sustain this like very expensive life. And other people I think are just like, one job isn't it for me anymore. And I think that's going to also change our talent strategy in HR. We're going to have to think about what if we're not the only client for someone?
Yeah. And the days of telling people they can't work 2 jobs, unless you're going to pay them enough, it's over.
We let people, as long as it's not in competition with what we're doing. I'm like, I can't, and you're getting your work done. I'm not going to stop you. That's your choice, right? Okay, let's get into some career hard truths. I have 3 for you, all based around like content you've written, stuff you've talked about. So I'm really excited to get into these with you. My first hard truth about careers: work alone won't get you promoted. So you talk a lot about how visibility is just as important as performance. For someone who's been taught to like put your head down and work hard, what's the first mindset shift they need to make?
The first mindset shift is that just because it comes easy to you doesn't mean that it's not worth talking about. So oftentimes we know our jobs really well, so we think to ourselves when a leader asks for an update, I'm not going to mention that. That's kind of perfunctory. But is it? The biggest shift that you have to make is starting to understand the work that I do. How does that tie to the overall, impact of the business? How does that tie into the mission vision? Whatever the Q25 goals are, the 2025 or the quarterly goals are, making sure you understand how that ties up to that. That is the number one struggle that I see. People work in silos and they just look at their desk. Case in point, I'll give you an example with my recruitment team. We would be filling a large order for 80 engineers to put together RF, radios. All they knew was that they had to fill 80 jobs, but they didn't understand that that was tied to a $50 million contract that we won. And it's important to understand that so then you can talk about, here's how I contributed towards us winning the $50 million contract. We put together a strategic sourcing strategy to go after our top 3 competitors, to analyze their benefits, to then recruit the very best talent the market had to offer. So it's being able to talk and cascade that out.
Yeah. And I always think too, like, I feel like I have failed as a leader on my team. If my team asks, but why are we doing this? I'm like, ooh, I missed the mark here. If they're asking me why we're doing something and they don't know why, like I have also failed as a leader. So I think it's always important to double down on that in your one-on-ones too. Like, here's how your work like contributes so much value. We actually ask that question in our performance reviews because we're running review cycles right now. So I'm like, in over my head with all these performance reviews, but we asked the question like, what's your two biggest achievements the first half of the year, and what value do they add to the business? Because we want our employees thinking about that to help also advocate for themselves, so that they see that the work they're doing day to day actually contributes to something big that we're all trying to achieve together.
Oh, for sure. And I personally made that mistake myself at times where I'm like, well, we just got 300 recs to fill.
Yeah. Oh, I just got to fill this role.
Yeah.
I feel that. I'm like, oh, I just got to do this interview. Got to get this person hired. What are some tactical ways people can build relationships with decision makers when maybe they're not like naturally extroverted, or
Sure.
if you feel like you're being overlooked? Like, I'm unfortunately an extrovert, as all of you know, but like there are people who aren't. Like, how do they still get that like visibility too?
So I, like you, and I actually recently posted about this because I feel like most of the world is saying they're introverted and they might not realize that it's a spectrum. I'm an ambivert. Depending on the day, I'll turn up or I'll turn down. So it just depends on what that looks like. So for somebody who's not naturally extroverted, it's learning to speak the language of what people care about. At the end of the day, that never changes. So often when I'm working with my clients and we're putting together their campaign, their promotion campaign, because it's running a campaign, it's identifying who wields power. And so those are the people in the work environment when they come in. Do they change the decision? Was there a decision being made? They came in, share their insight. That's an influencer. That's how you watch really closely about who holds power. So understanding what they care about first, right? And if you're not naturally extroverted, what you could do is double down on the things that you shine at. We know that people who are more in the middle of the spectrum or more introverted, they're better writers, better thinkers. And so you can shine in those areas in terms of making sure that the information is laid out in a way that somebody can digest it and calibrate it. Doesn't mean you have to be everywhere. You have to be all over the place. But I'd also say double down on maybe group settings don't work for you, but one-to-one interactions do. And so even for an extrovert, it could be difficult to start building relationships with people. So I always say observe what that person's doing over a few months. And then you can break down that wall by saying, I've been watching how you've been presenting and you do it with such fluidity. It's actually an area I want to get better at, and starting to build relationships one-to-one. And we know introverts often do really well with a one-to-one interaction versus an overall group. So you can still build relationships. It just looks a little different and you might do it from a one-to-one perspective, but I think anyone can do that. Even as a ambivert, I prefer building deeper relationships on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah, there's actually this one, I don't know if you're familiar with Gallup strengths, but there's this one Gallup strength. I can't remember what it's called, but essentially the essence of the strength is that you really like going deep with a few people versus a lot of people like really going wide with their relationship building. Like if this is one of your top strengths, you're really going deep with like a few people. And I thought that was just like really interesting. So we always talk like extrovert, introvert, Gallup strengths, ENTJ, like Myers-Briggs, which there's no science behind Myers-Briggs. So don't be quoting that one. But I think it's just like really interesting to like learn who you are and how you show up, and the tactics. Like a lot of career advice I see out there doesn't give it with the lens that you just gave it through. Like we ourselves are different. What works for me is not going to be what works for you. It's not going to work for someone different. So I love the way that you broke that down, because I do feel like a lot of the career advice is like geared at extroverts who will go out there and be like, I want this job, give me the promotion, or like, hey, look at all the great things I did. And it's like, there are other people in the workplace who move and operate differently.
And if you're an introvert, your number one skill is that you operate in quiet more than other people. So that means that you could take the Jeff Bezos approach if you want. So Jeff Bezos is notoriously known for waiting until the very end, whereas extroverts are taught to speak, or general career advice is speak within the first 30 minutes of a meeting. An introvert might not be comfortable doing that, but if you get an opportunity to see the entire sphere of what everyone said, you could be really thoughtful with your approach at the very end and share your thoughts too.
I love that.
Yeah.
Back to like, so this truth about like work alone won't get you promoted. Like obviously it's what you're doing, who you're connecting with, how you're talking about the work. Like let's say someone's doing everything right on paper, but they're still not getting tapped for like that next level. What do you think is missing behind the scenes?
Sure. It could be a few things, because I consider this more so like taking the car to AutoZone and getting a diagnostic. So it could be, if running a diagnostic on your career, here's the themes that I see. There always could be many things. It could be that you haven't been vocal enough about what you want to do, because sometimes we just assume that people know that we want to move up and that we're doing a great job. So that's one. It could be that you don't have the support of your leader, who is naturally recognizing that really good work, which is also a sign that you haven't built really good adjacent relationships. Because for anyone listening, the number one thing, you will know that you're talking to somebody who does not give out great advice if they're always telling you to quit. So a lot of my advice for people, when I give out psychological warfare tips and things like that, they're like, this is a lot, you should just quit. I'm like, you do know that everybody can't quit their job. And even in the best cultures, there's insidious people that are good performers. So that can't be the answer. You just have to learn how to play around with pyrodynamics. So that's the second one. Do I need to build relationships outside of my boss? The third is that when you're getting feedback that doesn't feel like it's tied to a corresponding action, there might be a perception problem. I know. So you're not strategic. It's just not time yet. And so when you're getting feedback that doesn't do that, and I've often gotten that feedback, and I'm known for saying, I'm sorry, I might have missed the criteria for success here. This is great feedback, but I missed the criteria for success. And so yeah.
I never want to be on your bad side. I feel like I never would anyways, but I just want to be clear. I would never also want to be on your bad side, because those are like such smart questions to be asking that I don't think a lot of people, I mean, I feel like we internalize so much at work too. And a lot of us are like afraid to say the thing out loud. And so you're right. Like I've gotten so much inactionable feedback, and I like talk about Textio as a company because they put out this report every year about how like women and underrepresented groups get less actionable feedback. So when I think about promotions, exactly the way you said, like if you're getting that feedback that has like literally nothing to do with getting the promotion, what you need to be successful in the role, like it's worth asking, I'm sorry, can you help me understand like why this is feedback I'm getting when it's not relevant to the role or the promotion at hand?
Yeah. Why doesn't my feedback mirror the SMART goals on my performance review?
I want you to coach me.
Yeah.
Like maybe we should maybe the rest of this is no more hard
We
truths.
can
You just
talk
coach
through
me.
this. We can talk through this. So just to sum it back up, just for clarity's sake, it could be that you're not being vocal enough, and you're assuming that people know that you want to get promoted. Two, you might not have a boss that recognizes the importance of replacing oneself in order to ascend to the highest level for them. And that means also moving you up too. And then the third is there might be a perception issue. And there's a lot of issues, but I'm just accounting for the three themes that I see with the women that I coach.
Love that. I mean, those are really great feedback. And I feel like I, at any point in my career to date, have experienced all three of those, like very rarely. Okay. Another hard truth you talk about quite frequently, because we're hitting three today.
Okay.
Getting fired or rejected isn't the end. It can actually be a pivot point. So you've said that getting fired was a gift. That's a tough pill to swallow for many people. How did you process that experience and reframe it in real time?
So in full transparency, in the moment, I was crying in the fetal position after it happened with ice cream.
Same.
Right?
Yeah, same. Yep.
So I will not say that I'm this person that was just like, okay, better things next day. I definitely wallowed for a bit, but it also wasn't a great environment. So in that case, I was high volume and I had no help. And so I was managing 80 different accounts. And they decided at that time that we had a hiring freeze. So I was expected to work that. And so I was not being vocal and the work was slipping. And I'm being very honest about that because I can retrospect what part did I play. And the part that I played was that I didn't advocate enough for myself to say, I'm not going to be successful if my workload is double everyone else's just because I work non-exempt roles. This is earlier careers. You can imagine everybody was exempt roles. So I didn't do a good job, but I will say that that was one of the lowest points that I was ever in. And I already knew I needed to go, but it was my first remote job. And I just felt like, this is a great deal. I was traveling. I was going different places. I was working from home. It was back in 2012, that time frame. And, when remote works just started getting really popular at that point. And so I stuck around because of comfort and I paid a huge price for it. But I also started to realize in those moments, that I was ready for more. And I was able to understand that from a demonstration of horrible leadership. So I have learned what good leadership looks like from both ends, working for great leaders and horrible ones.
Same. I also have had like a similar experience. It's tough. Like you're right in that moment. It is like the worst thing ever.
Yeah.
And I have like, first of all, thank you for being vulnerable. And I love that you've like shared that in online and in your work, because I feel like there's such a stigma around
Yeah.
getting fired or losing your job. And there's definitely something you learn from it. Like I
Oh, yeah.
also was miserable the first day. And then I was like, wait a minute, actually, this is later on. I was like, this is actually the best thing that ever happened to me in my
Yeah.
life. But it took time. And it's, I think, really scary, especially like the market now just terrifies me. I say that every episode, actually.
Yeah.
People are probably sick of me saying
The
that.
market, the market back then wasn't that great either.
Yeah,
It wasn't that great. It was
2012.
not a
Yeah.
great market. We had an interesting time between 2008 and 2012. It was an interesting time with jobs. But to go back to your point, rock bottom has a parachute. That's what I read. Someone wrote a book on that, that rock bottom is a trampoline. You can't really go any further. Where else are you going?
That's a really good point. And I only feel like I've gone up since
Yeah.
then too. So that's helpful. Oh,
Yeah.
I love that. When a client comes to you, because you coach so many people, when a client comes to you fresh off a layoff, or maybe even a rejection, what's the first thing you want them to understand about their worth?
So many of my clients don't know how to articulate their value. And so I do what I call an interview with them, because I want them to talk about the work that they do deeply. Because often when they're in it doing the work, they can't explain it. So when you're interviewing and you're doing what I call an information extraction per session, I'm understanding what they do. Like, do you understand that this is what you do? And I articulate their value for them, and I make them do it too. And they're like, you see that from me? I said, this is everything from you. I didn't make it up. It's just a matter of starting to separate yourself from the work that you do and then communicate it. And so that's one. They start to understand, wow, I really do a lot. Wow. And so that is how I work mostly with my clients. I don't work with a lot of clients who are not working anymore, but I do work with clients who have been scarred from being passed over for promotion. Same feeling multiple times. By the time they are coming to me, this is the entry point for clients with me, the two major ones. They've been passed over for promotion, or they got a surprise on their performance review.
A surprise on a performance review should never be a surprise.
It should not be a surprise party.
Oh no, I like yell at my managers. They get a very long document that is like, if you are surprising anyone with feedback, no, absolutely not. We need to talk about it before you put anything like that in a review. So that those are two really interesting. I've also been passed up for a promotion, so I feel like that is it's a really hard pill to swallow.
It really is, especially if you're not getting feedback. So for anyone listening, a sign that your organization doesn't have any plans on, maybe they don't have you on the 9 box, maybe you're not on succession plan, is if you are, going back to your point, getting inactionable feedback. That is a sign, because that covers them to say, well, I am giving this person feedback, but it's not really measurable. It's not the same level of quality. So it's just making sure that if you are required as an employee to give, really timely, measurable feedback, and it's clear that any feedback you get also should mirror that. And if it doesn't, then you've got a failure point.
Yeah, I got someone to talk about. We're all bad at feedback. It brings up something interesting for me. Somebody asked me earlier today, like, what really makes a candidate stand out to you in an interview? And to your point about helping people understand their worth, this is how I answer the question. I was like, first of all, I feel like whatever answer I give you will show you my bias, because like I want people to stand out in interviews, but I also want everyone to get a fair shake throughout the interview process, which is why we do a structured interview. But I think the thing that I find most admirable in interviews is when people feel confident and comfortable in themselves and their abilities. And so I love that you start with like a know your worth session, because I think we do the work day in and day out and we kind of forget it. We kind of forget that we have these like really great skills. And then when we've been dismissed for so much, it can really make you feel like not confident and not high value in your worth.
Oh, 100%. I often run into that when I was doing job search coaching, and I would have to interview them. I would interview them line by line against the bullets on the job description. And if they weren't able to confidently answer about 80% of that, I'm like, okay, we're shooting for the stars. Let's maybe shoot for the sun. If you're, only answering 50%, but
Yeah,
it's
that's so
it's
cute.
a helpful activity, especially because most people do meet that 80% marker or above.
Yeah, that's a good point. I love that. How can someone tell the difference between like a true career low and maybe a chance to like course correct? What signs should they pay attention to?
Yeah, so a true career low, a sign that you're at a low is you're just simply not enjoying the work that you're doing. So it goes back to that really cliche quote that we all see that we probably want to throw up if we see. If
Live, laugh, love.
if at any job you're not earning or learning or growing, leave. Right, that one. So you know which one I'm talking about.
I'm dying. And that's just the voice that, meanwhile, I'm over here like live, laugh, love. I'm over
Yeah.
here like live, laugh. Do I like my career?
And that's exactly the version of it, live, laugh, love, but is
It
the
is.
professional version of if at any job you're not earning or learning, you should leave, or doing both, leave. Typically that would actually apply there. That's what I would consider a career low. And the way to get out of that is to make sure at that point, I think the low informs you that direction is more important than speed. See, I'm getting more cliche on you.
Hmm.
Pulling out all the quotes.
Love this.
So that's usually a sign there that you probably should prioritize direction, because usually when I see that, it is someone who continuously goes and gets the next safe job. So say they are HR business partner, instead of applying for HR lead or something else in the COE, and I'm just using HR because we both come from that background, but it could be applied to anyone here. It could be that you're constantly applying for HR business partner roles, and that's soul sucking to you. And maybe you need to look at another COE, because you have, if you're HR business partner, you've touched other COEs, other centers of excellence for anybody listening. And so that is typically a career low, and it doesn't go away. It's sort of like burnout. It's going to require new systems, a new approach, a new way of thinking, a new way of being about things. That is what I would define as a career low. And you use that because you're already going through it, right? And it's already going to be a period of time that you're going to be thinking, not to rush into the next job, but to say, this will never happen again.
Yeah. Ugh. I just remember like all my career lows have been marked by all my career lows. Damn, I sound like I've been really going through it. Yikes. Some of my career lows have been marked by, when I look back and I think about them, I think like at the time I also like wasn't happy with how I was able to show up. Like not only was the work like draining and I hated it, I also just like didn't feel like I had the ability, capacity, space to show up as the best version of myself. So that's
Yeah.
like a really interesting point to me
Yeah.
around career lows. Okay, so that we talked about fired, rejection as a hard truth. I have one last hard truth for you.
Sure.
And I think this one's going to be really interesting. Excellence isn't tied to location or schedule. It's all about ownership. Do you hear that? All CEOs trying to force us back to the
Yes.
office? Just kidding. So you've earned multiple promotions while working remotely and raising kids. What did you do differently that made your leadership visible even when you're not in the room?
So that's a great question. So this is at the height of the pandemic. I don't believe that excellence is tied. And again, we're talking cliches here. I don't believe that excellence is tied to a location. I actually worked a lot harder from home. In
Same.
fact, I'm sure you have too. So I have to be honest. I don't have a lot of tips there, because there's a lot of things I should have done differently, because I was working 80 to 100 hours, because work became not me driving and having that time to listen to an album and grab, coffee. It was me stepping out of the room, getting dressed, and coming downstairs.
Yeah.
There was no separation. And so it was toxic excellence, if that's even a term.
Coined it here.
Coined.
Trademark it.
Right.
Trademarked here.
I was constantly working, but I have closed $1 million deals, and we have hit tripled and all the things over our KPIs.
Hell yeah.
I was wearing sweatpants.
Yep. Yeah, who
Star
cares?
Wars sweatpants.
I love Star Wars.
Exact. But in terms of staying visible, the reason why I'm going to go to that is that I don't think you even need to be on camera, but I do think it's important for you to understand the norms of your organization. So I worked at organizations where they were okay with just seeing April Little on the screen. I worked at other ones where they required visual presence on that camera. And so I made sure that I followed some of the social norms. I know that we all talk about bringing your whole self to work, but there is a certain portion of dying to self and assimilating to some of your environment. And so if you want to continue making sure that people see you and you're visible, you do have to get on camera if that's what your organization requires. You should volunteer for other committees so you're visible even if you're at home. And so, you can probably get away with not doing that stuff in the office. That's actually the benefit of going in. Maybe you don't need to join all the affinity groups and all the committees because you're already there. But I do think that that's a unique extra of working from home, is to make sure that you're visible cross-functionally with other groups.
Yeah, it's hard. Sometimes I don't want to be on camera. My CEO will be like, "Why aren't you on camera?" And I'm like, "Because my eyes are puffy and I'm tired and I just like don't want to be on camera today." But it's like a norm at our org to like be on camera, and people genuinely get like excited to see one another.
Yeah.
And at first I was like, can I just turn my video off every now and then? So like sometimes on meetings where I'm like, it's a one-on-one meeting and it's somebody I have worked with and built a really strong relationship with, I'll say like, hey, if I'm not feeling well, I'll be like, hey, I'm not feeling well. Can we just like turn off cameras and I can lie down? And the person will be like, yeah, absolutely. So like I've like built that relationship now over like years. So I know I can do that. But I love the idea of like understanding your organizational norms, because I think like a lot of that gets lost in translation when you're working remote.
It does. And we often see those blanketed statements on LinkedIn, for example. But to your point, you've cultivated a relationship with someone to say, I'm going to use another cliche that I can get my work done, whether I'm in a box with a fox or a house with a mouse. I can get my work done.
Yeah, that's a cliche I've never heard. So thank you for that. I'm really bad at saying.
Thank you.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's probably why I haven't heard Dr. Seuss in a really long time. Yeah. Maybe just green eggs and ham. So
yeah,
that's so funny. There's also, okay, so not everyone's going back to the office. So there's like really mixed reports on this, where they're saying like more Fortune 500 companies are back in office. There's like I have another friend who reports on this. That's actually like, that's not really true. They're not actually enforcing it. Like maybe they have a mandate, but they're not enforcing it. But there's like still this big bias that people who are in the office are more committed. How would you coach professionals to like challenge that without sounding defensive?
So I think the way to challenge it is to make sure that someone in the office looks that way because they're a bit more social. And so that goes back to wielding power, finding out who wields power, who influences. And I'm not saying, because I'm speaking to the introverts, the extroverts, the omniverts, the ambiverts, all of the new labels that we have. It comes down to making sure that you're visible with the people that matter even more so than not. Like talking to Susan at the printer for 30 minutes about her cat probably moves the needle because you're in the office, but that won't do it at home. So it's just understanding that landscape just looks a little bit different, but it doesn't mean that you can't be successful. But I'd also say it goes back to your culture. If the culture appreciates remote work and they understand the outputs that people are bringing in, and I'm saying outputs intentionally because people who do remote work more than even people in the office should be measured by their outputs. I think most people should be measured by their outputs, not their inputs. And I can tell, so you can tell it's an input culture if they care. But I've worked in environments where we've had hybrid, where some teams work remotely and people would make smart comments. But that means that leadership hasn't done their job to say that this is the exact same job. Right. And so I realize that stuff is there. But when it comes down to it, it means that you're not going to be able to work at home in your silo. You are going to have to figure out, who am I comfortable being social with, so I'm visible.
Yeah. It's so wild to me that people are so about the in-office thing. I find like even the conversation like so reductive with like, people are more productive in the office. And I'm like, you've never seen this girl in office?
No.
Because I'm yapping to everyone, not doing no work for 8 hours.
I've lost whole half days before with people stopping by in the office for a quick chat that turns into an hour. And what do they care? Because the work has to get done. So it means that as soon as I get home and eat dinner, my laptop's opening back up at the kitchen table.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, so like we talk about this like visibility with the people who matter, but also like there's a piece of it. Like I'm one of our only remote executives. Like my other three execs are in Austin with my CEO. For people who are managing like remote or hybrid teams, what does it look like to actually recognize and reward excellence in a way that doesn't depend on that physical presence?
I think it honestly comes down to their outputs. Are you rewarding people for the work that they're actually doing? Because I think the biggest issue I'm seeing right now with like JP Morgan Chase's They're measuring people by their inputs, meaning I see you. Whereas if you measure people by, wow, she put together an amazing QB quarterly review report. This person put this together. She had this idea. So it's starting to really recognize the work that people are doing, because at the end of the day, that's what you're there for. And I think it comes down to the culture also having that. And that is the leadership team. I'm going to also be intentional with this word, because there are people who listen who say that HR does nothing and they're all about the company. HR will advise, but they can't make leadership do anything. And so as long as there's a great HR pair to say, culturally, we need to address this, because you and I both know that culture does roll downhill, but there's also subcultures in certain departments that are allowed to run wild that need to be addressed. And so it really comes down to making sure that you're measuring people by the quality of the work that they're doing, and they're driving the needle and the efforts that they're making.
Yeah, it's hard sometimes though in HR, because some of our work is like hard to quantify. Outside of recruiting, I think recruiting is one of the easier ones, because like you're taking phone calls, you're doing phone screens, you're opening recs, like that one's pretty clear. There's sometimes work in HR that I feel like is really hard to quantify via output. Like having that conversation with that manager, coaching that person, like what would you do then? Like how would I talk about it to my peers?
So I think you bring up a really good point, and you're right. A lot of the work is intrinsic, right? Like I would say it's intrinsic work, but it does come back to earlier. I talked about understanding, how does coaching this manager tie into the overall goal of, okay, we have a 6% attrition goal, and right now we're riding at 8%. So I have to coach the managers. This is root cause work. And it's making sure that anything that you do ties back to the language only they speak. Because if you're speaking HR speak of, I need to meet with this manager, and this person only cares about, we're at 8% attrition, we need to be at 6%. It's making sure that you're cross-pollinating the communication.
Oh, that's such a good point. I love that. I'm going to take that into my work week, because that just like that I do think about it sometimes, because I'm like, I don't think people see this like invisible work that I'm
Yeah.
often doing, because it's not public, right? Like a lot of the things we do, we either do in secret, for lack of a better way of describing it, right? Like
Yeah.
employees don't know I'm having confidential conversations sometimes all day long. They just see me as like my calendar's booked and she's busy.
Yeah. They don't know that you're doing an investigation or, engagement stuff.
They don't know
They
shit.
don't know. No, they don't know.
They never know. That's also like, I think I'm just like in my feels this week, because I'm like, nobody appreciates HR ever. Like it just feels like the internet either hates HR,
Oh, yeah.
and then we're doing like this really emotional and emotionally intensive like labor style work that is often invisible, that like I think we could do better. I myself think I could do better at tying what I'm doing back to the impact, like you said.
Absolutely.
Like
I'd like
that
to
root
challenge
cause.
people's thinking, if you would allow me. So
Okay, hit me.
people are notorious online, and they always say, what? HR is not your
Friend, not trying to be your friend. Say you're not,
Exactly.
HR's not your friend.
What if I were to
Nobody's
say HR is not supposed to be your friend? HR is not. And so now that we've gotten that out of the way, can we stop making that post so it goes viral? Let's get that out of the way now. HR is not meant to be your friend. The same way you are there to do the job for the organization, so is HR. But that doesn't mean to villainize every HR person. There are certainly people that I have coached confidentially, which is why I'm now a coach, because I realize that the work that I do doesn't align with an organization without it being a gross conflict of interest. I get that. But don't make it seem like, and when I say gross conflict of interest, it means telling people, hey, here's where you are and here's how to get there. And sometimes, depending on if that person's not a succession plan, you're not supposed to have that level of conversation with them, right? And so it comes down to, now that you know that, be empowered with the knowledge to document, to make sure that you understand that everything that I do is on the record, not off the record. Don't let people call you all the time with the most important conversations. It's on the record. So it's taking that information to empower yourself versus disempowering yourself. You're not supposed to be your friend. We all have an employee ID and a W-2 that we get at the end of the year from the company. It's not hard to figure that out. Like
we are employees too. I know that the take like HR is not your friend is like a viral take. Like everyone gets behind it. But I'm also like, you fools, like no head of legal is not your friend. the CHRO is not your friend. The C like, yes, you can have connections with people at work, but like ultimately you're all there to enact what the business is trying to get done.
Yeah.
Like, I feel like it's a dark thing for me to say, but it's true, right? Like, I want to do what's in the best interest of the business and the people. Like, I think I'm successful if I'm able to balance both. But I know ultimately, like, one has to come before the other. And it is the company, because that is what employs me and what keeps everybody else employed.
Absolutely.
And like, if I am your friend, like, you don't want me to be your friend, because what if I like you more than the other person? Then
Yeah.
suddenly I'm in conversation advocating for you for a promotion, not the other person for a promotion. That's not fair.
It's a simple perspective shift. That's what you just gave me just now.
It's not fair.
That's
Anyways,
what.
wow.
Yeah.
I feel like I need you to coach me on my life. Like, I need you to come back for a whole
I,
session
I
of
feel
like,
like I enjoy this so much. We need to co-coach each other, because now you're coaching the ex HR person in me that is still healing from certain aspects of the job. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
need to be in there. I need a separate therapist just for my HR trauma or my HR shit I've had to deal with, of like, sometimes I'm like, am I being gaslit right now? Like, I feel like I'm really seeing this
Yeah.
thing, and why does nobody else see this thing, but I'm really seeing it? Like, how
Right.
do I?
Nobody else. And you're like, oh my God, was I given a vision that nobody else can see? I did
Yeah.
want to just piggyback on your other point here too, where we were talking a little bit about the HR shift and
Yeah.
the work that you're doing. Oh, I just lost my thought. Pause.
You're doing great. I honestly can't string a real thought together any
Oh
given day.
my God, I lost my thought. But it was something that you said, and I'll probably find it later. But it goes back to just empowering yourself with the information. I mean,
Yeah.
you know what you're there for.
Yeah. And I forget. Some days I'm just like, I'm on autopilot, right? There's
Yeah.
this, I'm a big Buffy the Vampire Slayer fan. There's like a Buffy sticker right
Oh,
there.
I love that show.
They're
That's
gonna
when
do
the
a
WB was good. That was when
bit of
CW was good.
so good.
I
The
know.
UPN,
Yep.
WB, so good. Like, obsessed. But it's one of my favorite shows. And there's a musical episode, which I don't love, but it's actually really good, because the very first song is Going Through the Motions, and she talks about how she just feels like she's going through the motions. And I think about that sometimes in HR, because I get scared that I've just moved on autopilot for some time, that I do forget to connect it back to that. What impact am I bringing? I am maybe changing people's lives and opinions on HR, like, not to make myself sound greater than I really am, but like, I
But it
do think
is.
that's a
It's
thing.
just that
Yeah.
you do it every day, so you don't see it as this extraordinary thing that you do.
No, and this reminder, like, back to the very first thing you said, like, helping people know their worth. I love reminding people on this podcast all the time that like, HR can be one of the most powerful functions in an organization. I don't care what the hell the internet says, what the people on Twitter say, or what the tech bros will talk about HR.
Yeah,
There is a real skill set for this role that I think is very strong and can really take a company
and
to the
absolutely.
next level when you're able to do your job.
Yeah, I couldn't agree
So
more. I couldn't
know
agree
your
more.
worth. I think Drake
Now,
has
I
that song.
just got the thought back because you said it. So
Yes.
the people who often have issues with HR is that they want to use HR as their personal career coach. And when they can't do that, that's difficult for them. They want to use them as their personal confidant. And when I see people at what I call the mid-level, where they're making 150, 200K, at that point, you need to stop asking yourself more of HR and more of yourself about why I don't have a coach, or why I don't have a built-in support system in my friendships that I can talk to about these things, because that was never the point. And so I often feel like it's a bit misplaced. And at that point, what I can tell you for sure is also what influenced me to be a coach, is I'll never forget my boss, who was also my sponsor. This is 10 years back. There was a gentleman who often I never saw him really looking at technology, reading anything. And I'm like, how does he come into these meetings with all these ideas? And she said, he has a coach. Now, and so it comes down, and he probably, he had a peak performance executive coach, which is a little bit different when a person gets into your work. But I think that we often see that misplaced. We see a lot of misplaced anger about delegating our success in our hand, and delegating our success in our career to HR, when it is your job to make sure you have a good sounding board, right, for that. And so those sponsors that maybe you're not making should become your mentors when you leave that job. They're supposed to convert, and you should still have that. And I often find when people don't have that, that's when HR gets a lot of unfair blame because they don't have anybody to calibrate with.
Yeah, I'm like, I'm not your
Yeah.
career. I'm also
Yeah.
like, to be clear, not like I'm not a trained coach. I can give you advice on your career, right? Like, but I would tell people to go to you sooner than come to me. I'm like, what? This is not my subject area expertise, right? I could coach anyone, but like there should be someone external. Cause back to what you said, that point about like an internal coach is actually like potentially in conflict with the organization. You want a
Yeah.
non-biased third party coach
Yeah.
over trying to go to HR to get coaching advice. Cause like I know things like I know there might not be a promotion in the works. I know there's no next level for you. I know the business doesn't have a need to promote you. So like
Yeah.
how that this incentives are misaligned. Like what
Oh,
would I get
100%.
from me coaching you other than you asking me, okay, can I have that promotion now?
Yeah.
I'm like, no, you can't.
No, you can't.
Just
You
because
can't
you've been
have that
talking to me.
promotion
Yeah,
now.
you can't have that promotion now. We're really in the time of no promotions, honestly. The era of no promotions.
They are far few in between, unless
Okay.
you're really, again, if you know how to articulate your value, and I often tell people this because sometimes they'll come to me and say, well, I'm looking for a job, but I want to develop. And I'm like, well, when you learn how to articulate your value in a way that's compelling and persuasive, and you know how to inform, influence, and inspire, you can sell water to a fish, AKA you can interview very well too. You don't need to have this tailored thing, right? You just need to know what you do and how you solve a problem for an organization.
Oh, this has been so fun for me. We can definitely
Same here.
co-coach each other. This has been the best. This has been the
Really.
best hour of my life.
Thank
Okay,
you.
but now
I've enjoyed this so much.
I'm having so much fun. I'm like, but seriously, can we still really co-coach each other? Because
Yeah,
like,
we should.
I feel like
We should have a sounding board because I have a lot of stories that I'm just, from clients, going back to even your other point about an internal coach. She had an internal coach and things started getting leaked, and she realized that the company sponsored executive coach wasn't good for her. And so this person that I coach now was appointed a $20,000 a year coach, and she's now paying me instead of going to that person because they are only appointing and paying for people, that they're sponsoring. And so that means that when she would bring things up, she'd find water droppings, as I call it, or, water dropped information in her one-to-one. And she's like, well, why are you talking to me about that? And so, yeah, I don't recommend it. You need an external party.
you just like waited to the end to drop the juiciest
I'm
tea.
sorry. I know.
That also feels like I almost said the Hippocratic Oath, but like coaches aren't doctors. But like, doesn't that feel like you don't want your coach to be telling your company things you're talking to them? That feels very bad.
Exactly. And so again, that is the difference of why you need an external party that's not employed by your job, because while they don't give the details, they are told to alert them of like major issues, right? If you bring up something around sexual harassment, the buzzwords, that's going to get reported. It's not private. Not that it should be private, but I just mean, but like if you're a flight risk and, you are like a key performer, key contributor, that can come up.
Wow. Okay. Well, she said spicy tea on the last few minutes of the podcast, which means you will absolutely be back. Until people can get co-coached by us, LOL. How can people get in touch with you? Like, let's say I'm assuming anyone listening to this episode would be just as obsessed with you as I currently am. How can they find you?
So I'm going to change the order of how they can find me, because these days I'm building my Instagram following. So I'm on Instagram at I am April Little. So I primarily do videos over there around power dynamics and influence and workplace psychological warfare and all the things. So please follow me there. But if you want general career, if you're somebody who's aspiring to the executive level, even if you're currently a manager, the skills that you need to get there happen 3 or 4 jobs before you get there. You're welcome to follow me on LinkedIn, where I share a lot of tips.
Okay, now promise me, because if I say it, I'll manifest it, that you'll come back next season for an episode on power dynamics.
Yes, let's do it.
Yes. Do you hear? I basically held her
This is my
hostage.
favorite topic, because people know you can give them the skills to get promoted, but when the roadblocks are there of toxicity and not knowing how power is wielded at work, they don't know how to operate.
Okay, ... To be continued. April will be back. Thank you so much for joining me today. This was so fun.
Thank you for having me.
I'll see you next time. Thanks for tuning in. Keep up with all the latest HR resources by subscribing on Apple, Spotify, Google, or wherever you listen. And if you love I Hate It Here, tell an HR friend. I'll see you next time.